Yeah, I mean, I would love to say no, but yes, definitely. And I've been, again, very blessed in my career to have worked with some very strong CEOs. And my current CEO now, who's the founder and managing director, so my current boss, he is very hands-on and very committed to growth. He's really committed to growth and sustainability from a business perspective. But the reality is it's change, right? And change is never linear. Everybody likes to think it, you kind of just look like this, but it's a roller coaster, right? So the team on the whole, I would say, has been very supportive and really on board. But definitely you have to be mindful of those, the change process and, the let's be honest, I'm new to the team. So yeah, I definitely experienced the forming, storming, norming, performing and adjourning, right? I'm definitely a little bit between storming and norming. So
That is, so I've been lucky in the sense, so I reported directly to our chief revenue officer who recently left to become a CEO. Super excited for him.
Yeah.
But with that, that's now allowed me to now report to our chief operating officer and have kind of even more kind of visibility into the overall business metrics and how things are going. But for me, I think kind of building relationships with this C-suite, it starts with clearly aligning the customer success strategy with the broader business objectives. So I need to understand where are we going as an entire business, and then to be able to tie the metrics and what we're doing, the projects we're doing and initiatives and campaigns and all of that directly to these business metrics and numbers. And I think that's something that for me in my career has been really, really important. Typically, C-suite members and executives are very data-driven. They are very analytical and really care about the numbers of the business, and they have to. And so I think that's something that what I can do is speak their language and kind of help them understand what we're doing and how it's going to contribute, but also help them understand areas that we can do more. If there's something that that we aren't really fully tapped into that I think is going to have a positive impact on our customers and on our business, it's my duty to really bring those things to them to be able to say, hey, we actually put our goals here. I think we can surpass this. I think we can do more if we do these couple things. And so I think being able to help them in that way has been very positive. Helps them to kind of prioritize more time with me, because I think that like the more that they understand how CS can contribute to the larger business metrics, that's helped me get more face time with them, because now they can come to me with different challenges or different things that need solved, and see me as kind of a key member of the leadership group there.
Yeah, so that's a good question. So I actually wrote an article about it quite a while ago, not specifically with building relationships with the C-suite, but more so how you would form strong cross-functional bonds. And I think this applies here too. And so the first time that I set out trying to build a cross-functional bond with a cross-functional stakeholder, though, this wasn't somebody specifically in the C-suite, so I can get to the C-suite part of it later in the answer. But just to give you an example of how I went about it the first time and what I learned from it, which has helped me get better at building strong cross-functional bonds, right? So, I was working with an engineering stakeholder, and we were looking to work together on a process so that our team, our customer success team, would be alerted by engineering whenever a customer's setup was stalling, because we had identified this to be a leading indicator to churn. Though I did struggle with the fact that while I was very process driven and my CS team was very process driven, the engineering team we were working with was a little bit more free form. And so we were really getting stuck with building what I thought was a very simple process. Just alert us when a customer setup is stalling. It really, in theory, is not too hard to identify. And so in thinking about why I wasn't really seeing much success with engineering helping us out in building this process was the first mistake I had made when I took a step back was I hadn't started with the why and I hadn't conveyed the importance of setting up this process. I had just said, hey, like we need this process. I kind of assumed in my high level explanation that they would get it, but I didn't really start with the why. So in building strong cross functional bonds, you always have to start with the why, right? And then, it's important to be adaptable as well, right? Because you have your needs in CS, they have their needs in engineering. So, how can you come together to make it a win win situation for both sides, right? How can you work together towards a greater common goal? So, that's something that I would say is very important when building strong cross functional bonds. And then it's also important to, again, understand constraints, right? Engineering is very busy. They have a lot of things that they're working on. We have a lot of things we're working on. So, how can we make the case compelling? How can we really show that we are partners, telling them, hey, like if you can find time in your schedule to build this, this is the bigger company goal that it ties into. And here is something we can do for you to lighten the load, right? Just understanding the two-way nature of the relationship to make it a win-win situation for both sides, right? Rather than just asking, but then also being willing to provide from our side as well. So, true cross-functional collaboration only happens when every stakeholder that's collaborating are involved and bought into the same vision. So keeping in mind the two-way nature of it is important. So anyway, as I fixed all of these things, as I began to be a true partner to the engineering team, be adaptable, understand constraints, and paint a compelling bigger picture of the same common goal we were working towards, I was able to get that buy-in from the engineering team. So that's, I guess, first of all, what I would share in terms of my takeaways of building strong partnerships cross-functionally. Now, specifically for the C-suite, right? So same thing applies to C-suite, right? But you need to go that extra level to help make them aware of how your work or our work is providing value and drives towards what they care about, right? Everybody in the C-suite is, of course, tasked towards these higher level company goals, company OKRs, right? GRR and DBNR that we talked about a little bit earlier in the conversation are definitely a part of what we're driving towards as a company, right? So being able to tie your efforts, show how they bubble up to driving these high level initiatives is a great way to gain buy-in with your C-suite. Now, it's not always clear, and I get it, it's not always clear cut, but still there's always a way to tie. There's usually a way, and if not, you probably have to rethink what you're working on, but there's usually a way to tie the value of what you're doing towards these higher level goals that the C-suite cares about.
Yeah, so the C-suite, so being a C-suite, I will tell you, I think it's pretty easy that a C-suite would always support the project. I could be wrong, but at least at Etech, we're pretty close-knit family. We're all been here for a long time. I think that's the easy part. I think the harder part, which we're seeing, what I'll call the battle, is to get the buy-in at every level of the organization.
Okay. Would you
Right?
say that's
That is a very good question. You have to speak the language of the C-suite, right? Talking to a CRO, CFO, even CEO. They
and
want
those are
numbers.
the chief revenue officer, the chief financial officer, and the chief
The
executive
financial.
officer. Yep. Usually the big
Exactly.
three at any company.
Exactly. They're going to care about our numbers.
Yep.
And that's why I've aligned my customer success team to the company goal, to the revenue, so they can directly see the impact of the team in terms that they understand and metrics that they understand. Because if I just start, I'm not specifically talking to my C-suite because, to be fair, they totally understand the importance of CX, yes. So it's I think that's one hurdle, one challenge that I actually don't have, that some other CS leaders have. They already understand the importance of a good customer experience and, a good, like, a customer success strategy. But I do believe that in a lot of cases, right, if I talk to them about, oh, product adoption, like
Yeah.
it doesn't translate to, at the end of the day, money,
Yeah.
right? Like that's what they, how does it translate to us growing our revenue? And so whenever I need to get buy-in, I always come in with like the numbers. How do I believe that can impact the bottom line? And it doesn't, we've already set the systems in place that allow us to really track what our CSMs are doing and how that translates to the impact to the revenue goals. So it's always, I think, like as I mentioned, speaking the language of the C-suite, speaking the language of revenue helps you make your case. But also, that's why I like data, because I personally am a I rely so much on data. I don't believe it if there's no data on it. Or I mean, people tend to not believe something they don't see real data that it happened. So always coming armed with data is very helpful. I would say those are the two things. Always how do it ties back? How does this tie back to company goals, revenue, and what's the data saying?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because again, every organization is super different, and sometimes you're brought in as like a individual contributor that's like growing with the business, and as you grow, you then progress into a leadership role. My last few roles, I've been brought in as the most senior leader, part of the executive team, so I attend our weekly executive team meetings. I literally bring the customer to the table of those meetings as well. I think that my approach to the C-suite is just also my approach in how we work with multi-threaded stakeholders within a customer. Like I said earlier, you have multiple stakeholders, both internally and externally, and the C-suite is one of those internal stakeholders that is critical that you work with. Now, will you be sitting next to your CFO every single day? No, probably not. I mean, gosh, that might be a lot to commit to, but will you be working with him to really understand like the profit loss margin, how you're going to start budgeting for your headcount? Yes, you should be. And the thing is, there's always something to learn from your stakeholders. And in my first leadership role, I didn't know that I should be talking to all these different stakeholders. And sometimes I was more controlled rather than in the controlling seat. So again, like I said, it's really important in your first 100 days to make sure you understand your internal stakeholders. And I think the C-suite, whether it's directly the CFO or anyone else within the organization that is the C-suite that influences, you should have some sort of regular contact, regular check-in, regular understanding of the ways of working of how customer success interacts with the chief product officer or the chief technology officer or the chief marketing officer, whoever the C-suite title you're interacting with. It should be some level of initiative from your side to make that connection.
Yeah, good question. So I was just yes, usually it's two different roles. So it being one role, I have a lot of angry conversations with myself, I guess.
A lot.
Exactly. I disagree with myself all the time. No, I think one of the keys for success in terms of C-suite collaboration is understanding the KPIs and metrics for each team member. So, I was just having a conversation today with my head of engineering and chief product officer. Those two have KPIs around delivering roadmap items on time and on budget, and ensuring we listen to our customers, right? So I understand what they want and they understand what I need, right? Which is to have features that I can go and sell that drive expansion, but I can't sell stuff that's not feature complete, right? So we have clarity on kind of what each other needs. The conversation we were having today is about some friction in our organization when it comes to escalating open bugs that need to be resolved quickly because the customer says so. Of course, you have your objective view on the severity of a bug, but then you have the customer view, and those oftentimes do not agree with one another. So I understand, having an understanding of what engineering needs for my team when it comes to reporting bugs and escalating bugs allows me to go to my team and say, hey, we need to align to the process that the product and engineering team follows with the way that we escalate these things. So instead of just kind of being selfish as a CX leader and saying, hey, I need these things fixed, I don't care how you do it, stepping back and saying, okay, the most efficient way for us to get this job done as a business is to wait for a meeting that we do weekly, or to tag a Jira ticket instead of pinging somebody on Slack. It sounds super minute and in the details, But I think that ability to step out of your selfish KPI and understand the most efficient way for not you, but rather the wider executive team to all get what they need is critically important. And if you can go beyond your silo and step into theirs and build bridges between the departments, A, you get a lot of goodwill, and B, you ultimately as a company, accomplish your goals faster as well. So I think that to me is a key recipe for success with other leadership team members.
Yeah, it makes sense. I bet the developers love using the Jira tickets in their sprints. Probably just like, all right, deal with that in 2 weeks. It'll be easier for them.
Yeah, and you know what? The thing that really I wish people thought of more is, it's pragmatism. Yeah, it's probably easier for me to just ping a Slack message and an email and then say, well, you didn't read my email. But ultimately, the customer is going to yell at me if the job doesn't get done. So if I take a little extra effort now to adhere to a process or use the process that I know is going to deliver the best outcome faster, then I may not get yelled at by that customer. So it in some ways is inherently selfish, albeit it's, an A to B to C relationship, and then instead of just directly A to B, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I'm a CEO now by title, but I still act as if I'm the VP of CX or the Chief Customer Officer. The title's a nice badge on your LinkedIn profile, but nothing more. And the same principles, first of all, is you've got to empathize with the audience. If you're talking to the IT director, a CTO, he doesn't care about your staff empowerment or your staff morale. He's got a million other IT platforms. If you're talking to your chief HR officer, he doesn't care about customer feedback. But if you're talking to the CEO and the CFO, they care about, okay, Alex, how much is it costing us, this inefficiency you talk about? And what's the opportunity we can gain? But it doesn't always need to be we lose 10% and we can gain 12%. It can be by being better at this, we can then be known as best in class in the sector, and then we can steal market share from our competitors. So you have to turn everything into a customer life cycle stage. And some very simple examples is, did you know that 92% of people that come to our website and browse this product, or 56% of people that make a call, don't go on to buy it or even get a quote? So we've looked into why that is. You have to give the why. And because the customer journey sucks, they want more information about the product. They're given a phone number to call, so they literally drop off, or they start to place an order. It gives no information on delivery timescales, so they drop off. So you have to put all these things into clear buckets and then say, by fixing these 2 or 3 things, well, actually the cost of these things is probably 1.2 million in revenue per month, per quarter, whatever. And by fixing these alone, say you address 25% of them, there's $300,000 extra dollars every month you could make that you have to put everything into a simple bucket like that. But a lot of people think CX is about tangible return on investment. What I like to say is, okay, we currently have 4 or 40% market share against our competitors. Here's how they do it. Here's what customer feedback says about the frustrations with their competitors as well. So if we could be the one company that doesn't do the same mistakes, we can still 5-10% market share. And that's where the big bucks of CX really come.
So one, my job in the C-suite is to represent the customer experience, but to realize that I am there as a business leader, not as a CX leader. So my job is to help my peers be wildly successful as well. So I find building strong relationships, understanding their goals and objectives, and really, surfacing how I can help them be successful. Where are the friction points between teams? How do we make that productive friction? It's not that everybody has to agree, but we have different points of view for a reason. How do we engage in constructive conflict? And when you help others, they tend to be open-minded. I also come with a lot of data, and business leaders buy into data. Not always right, but you're at least providing objective insights along with your intuition, which you are called upon to offer as well. But even your intuition.
Yeah, I think I'm quite lucky in this because our C-suite, our CEO, designed the product. He built the product. He's still there on a day-to-day basis and is very, bought in and hugely passionate about the direction of where we go. So generally, in this role, things that I wanted to do have been, have generally been backed. Adoption is
Awesome.
basically our company, it's part of our company strategy. It's our key key strategy goal to grow adoption and to hit figures in terms of the number of matters that we are opening and running through the platform. So I definitely got the buy-in already there. I think it's more about agreeing the priorities. So sometimes there can be a challenge with the balance between internal and externally focused activities. So sometimes, we might need to do some work to review how our renewals process works. How are we working the most efficient ways? Could we streamline that? Are we doing everything we need to do in the right time frames? So sometimes there's a bit of a trade-off there between those activities as being sort of too inwardly facing, and there's pressure from the C-suite to maybe be more outwardly facing and make sure we're always focusing on the customer. So sometimes we've had to just have a bit of a trade-off and balance those activities out to sort of make sure we are working on both sides of the coin. But generally, I think that in this organization, that buy-in is fairly easy. The other thing that we sometimes found difficult, though, is getting actually the buy-in for when we perhaps we need to do some more technology, or we need to think about how we might scale. And it's just making sure we build those business cases. We're still in a startup mode, so when we need to sort of get a business case together to get some budget to buy some new technology, it's important we're doing things for the right reasons. And we know this from the work of the business that we do. We don't want to just buy tech for tech's sake. So really just making sure that we always build those business cases correctly to make sure we're investing in technology for the right reasons that might actually help the business and actually push the need on adoption, really.
It is. I mean, I think this leads right into that. I think it's pulling them into the discussion. We're 40 to 50 employees, so we all know each other. We all sit by each other. They can even if somebody's on the phone with a customer, the C-suite hears it. No, so it gets different as the company scales for sure, but really being communicative with them, letting them know that you're going through the discipline of, how does this impact revenue? How does this, how are we being responsible with just resource constraints? We have, 10, 12 developers at our company. They can only do so much. So I think if the C-suite, and I, as a CX professional, need to understand, the revenue potential, the cost of the labor and things like that. I think sometimes it's easy to bang on the C-suite for caring about things like money, but their job is to keep the company profitable. So, and I, in some ways, as a manager, I kind of have to be a middleman between customer support and the C-suite and be good at explaining those things to both sides of that. And I feel like, it's another thing I'm learning, just like you mentioned, learning how to explain things effectively to our kids.
Yeah. If I can explain to my kid, I can explain it to my boss, right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, so no, definitely. Like our managing director is coming from a financial background, so numbers are really important when we're trying to bring across that message and that communication. So it's definitely a stories number when we're trying to communicate with them. So I think having clear measurements, having your benchmark beforehand, and then being able to kind of show movement in that, where you're making impact and return on investment is super important. Because otherwise you kind of lose the strength of your conversation. Like you have to be able to evidence the work, and I think that sometimes can be a struggle when it comes to CX. Like when you're speaking to senior stakeholders, there's sometimes an element of CX is a bit fluffy. So I come across that not where I am, but previously. That there's maybe a feeling that it's just a nice to have, it's not a necessity. So I've always taken that with me, and I find the biggest way to kind of make an impact is through movement numbers and being able to show movement, return on investment, and being able to link that to the customer experience. So that's something that I feel really passionately about, and it's definitely where I've been able to get the best buy-ins, is where I'm able to show the evidence in terms of the numbers.
That
And
makes a
we're
lot of
looking to do
sense.
that. Yeah.
So establishing partnerships with the C-suite always is a challenge, right? Because they have invested in a product. They are going through significant change, right? And not every C-suite stakeholder is, totally bought in onto a new platform or the idea of a new platform. There is going to be resistance, right? Again, another quote comes into my mind, right? Which is, if I'm not wrong, again, I think it's by George Bernard Shaw, who said something like, "Don't wait for an opportunity, create it." Right? So you're not going to have your C-suite typically knocking your door every day, asking for help. My take is to look at the challenge your stakeholder is facing and become a problem solver, rather than waiting for a C-suite stakeholder to turn up at your doorstep and ask you how to solve a problem, right? So my take is to always prepare well, be brave, and knock the door of your stakeholder. Everyone, right? We as humans, everyone love the idea of, love ideas that help us achieve more value. So it's important to be that person who becomes proactive and takes an initiative to engage and become a problem solver. And you can elevate your role from becoming a mere partner to a trusted advisor with the C-suite. So it's easy to always shy away from this and not knock that door, like I said. But then in the end, we only regret the chances we didn't take, right? So
Exactly.
it's important to go for it and build a trust and partnership with C-suite as early as possible, because that's when you're going to have stakeholders who are not only going to be your advocates, but your champions, right? To say that, hey, this is the way forward. This is what you need to be doing within their organization.
And when you have those conversations with the C-suite, are you metrics? Are you you're talking about coming to them with a solution to a problem, which I think is a key when working with the C-suite, right? They don't want problems. They want answers. They've got enough to worry about. So this was a problem and I fixed it. Here you go. That makes them happy. But is there a way you communicate with them? Is there a way you come into these meetings? I can tell you're going to be very prepared, but is there certain metrics they care about that gets them to buy in? Is it the churn going down? Is it your NRR continuing to grow? What do they really care about at a big company, like Salesforce?
So it is important to understand your business well and understand your customers well. There are multiple metrics, right, that you look for. Like you said, NRR and churn and the works. It's important to have your stories that back all your metrics, because metrics up your numbers, they don't really tell the story, right? It's important to back whatever you are talking about with metrics, I agree, but it needs to have a story, and without the story, it's very hard to get buy-in from C-suite. So what I would typically recommend is people, do your due diligence, get your metrics out, but always have a story ready for your successes and what even things that are not working well in your organization. Because it's important to always display yourself as being one step ahead of what the C-suite typically has got for you, right? So it's important to do your due diligence in advance before engaging with C-suite in general.
Yeah.
Well, initially, the C-suite in this case didn't like the first survey results at all. They were reading the customer comments at an offsite at Pebble Beach, interestingly.
Beautiful.
And all the morning they were just thinking, well, this can't be right. They're so negative. So we were twice as big as our next competitor. Okay. What day was this? What serial number are they talking about? Who did these interviews? These comments are just unbelievable. Well, the VP of CX at that time stood up and held the book in front of them and said, think of this as a mirror. You're going about your day. You've got something in your teeth, your hair is sticking up, it doesn't bother you, you're just going about your day. The customer's seeing that and like, oh my gosh, this guy, right? So think about this as a mirror. And remember what our chairman always says, good news is no news. No news is bad news. And bad news is good news. So luckily after lunch, they thought about our culture. So just as I mentioned, what you should do in your first 100 days, think about your culture. What works, what doesn't for the mentality that you guys have. Because culture is nothing more than the group's way of thinking and doing. What gets people ahead or not. So that's how they came up with this plan to do these one-day workshops everywhere, giving everyone their own cut of the data to minimize finger pointing, telling them the whole plan that every quarter we're going to be collecting the root cause improvement progress, single-page strategies, and that's what their bonus is going to be based on.
That worked, and I bet they paid attention, especially when you allocate the funds to their pay. That's got to be super effective.
Well, the senior leaders, they could see the potential, like the consequences of doing nothing. So
yeah, lost opportunity cost.
That's what I would do if I were going into a different situation where the customer didn't say that, is I would just be creating that picture so that they were seeing, look, we can continue to be on this constant treadmill of just trying to meet our quotas, hit the numbers at whatever cost, and throwing things down the road, kicking the can down the road. But we could be smarter. And look how much more we could have because of being smarter. So again, it's not just about the revenue or making the numbers, but it's about something more personal, more salary increase, more profit sharing, more budget, more hiring to help carry the workload.
Yeah, it's really about retention if you're talking about anything post-sale. So if I'm able to consistently show that the tactics and techniques that we're deploying is keeping the customers on our platform at a higher rate, then I typically get the attention. When you get negative attention is when those churn rates start to escalate and to get a little bit higher than you would want. So I try to keep it on the positive end of the spectrum all the time.
Do you find that coming into these meetings and with the C-suite with data is really strong? Do they care more about the ROI of what they're investing? Is there a particular metric in which they value more than anything that you can communicate through?
Well, the tried and true metric for anything post-sale related, and I'm going to lump CS and CX all in the same boat, is retention. And so there's always a dollar tied to retention. You can slice it and cut it a number of different ways, but each customer has a dollar sign on it. So whether you want to go from a net revenue retention perspective or just, really heads that you're retaining or logos that you're retaining, you can slice it and dice it either way, and it still comes out to retention.
Yeah. So for me, there was a lot of ways to establish support. And I think for me, I usually fall on, regardless if it's CX, regardless if it's whatever you're trying to do, I think you have to find the decision makers, C-suite, but you also have to find the people that know it, even the team members, the people who can help you also evangelize at whatever level. And so what we did was we kind of got a group of believers together quickly and went to leadership with metrics, with a clear vision. Here's what you're going to get, right? Here's the upside of what you're going to feel or what we're going to feel as a company. Here's what would happen if we don't do it. And so I think for us, it was creating that compelling story. It was getting those believers on board. But it was also, for me, having them trust us that this was worth taking the risk, doing something different, and then helping them. So I didn't stop there, right? We didn't stop there as a group. What we did was we also brought them along as we were sausage making the process, right? So we were letting them know this was a little bit difficult, but here's how we were going to solve for it. So I think it was also getting that buy-in and that information along the way as well. And then we were tracking the milestones, keeping score.
Well, data always works, right? C-suite doesn't know what they don't know, right? So if you are bringing to them data that shows what our customers like and what will have them continue to do business with us, they want to get on board with that. On the other side, if you show them where we can tweak the process or where we can improve a little bit, they're also very interested in that. In the field that we're in, we have an R&D team, we have a manufacturing team, and so they are very keen on understanding what our customers are saying about our products, what they want to see in the next generation of our products. And that's a unique place to be. So I will say I've had a receptive audience to date, which is very nice. I know that is not always the case.